The Iron Wolves motorcycle gang rolls on a 72-year-old Walters Montana ranch, demanding he sell his family's land for pennies on the dollar. When the veteran refuses, these leather-clad thugs beat him unconscious and shoot his prize cattle, laughing as they spray paint threats across his barn. But the quiet gardener next door isn't just some peaceful retiree. This is Donnie Yen himself, the legendary Wing Chun master. The gang leader has no idea. He just declared war on a man who's spent decades perfecting the art of destroying multiple opponents with lightning-fast precision. While the bikers celebrate terrorizing an old soldier, the martial arts icon watches from his property line, his calm exterior masking the awakening of something deadly. These punks think they're dealing with helpless country folk, but they've actually cornered a dragon who's spent his whole life protecting the innocent. What happens when 40 hardened criminals face off against the fastest fists in cinema? Can even Donnie Yen survive when the gang discovers his identity and brings reinforcements? What happened next would terrorize the Iron Wolves for the rest of their pathetic lives. Before we jump back and tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Dawn crested over the Rockies, painting Cedar Ridge Valley in shades of gold and amber. Walter Kowalski gripped his steaming coffee mug with weathered hands, surveying the 400 acres his family had worked for 3 generations. At 72, his arthritic joints protested the early hour, but the morning ritual anchored his soul to this Montana soil. His prize Angus cattle grazed peacefully in the distance, black dots against emerald pasture. The sight still stirred pride in his chest. Honest work, honest living, the American way his grandfather had carved from wilderness. Walter's military short silver hair caught the breeze as he studied his domain, noting the low water level in Willow Creek that had sustained Kowalski cattle since 1924. Fresh tire tracks scarred his south pasture. Probably teenagers joyriding again, Walter figured, though something about the deep tread marks nagged at his Vietnam-trained instincts. He'd learned to trust those warnings 45 years ago in the jungle. Movement in the neighboring yard caught his attention. Through the morning mist, his mysterious neighbor Danny performed what looked like an elegant dance, movements flowing like water, yet precise as clockwork. The man was about 50, lean and muscular, with an intensity that reminded Walter of special forces operators he'd known in the war. Danny had moved in 18 months ago, paying cash for the old Henderson place. Polite but private, he tended his garden with the same fluid precision he brought to his morning exercises. The two men exchanged respectful nods across the property line, a daily ritual that had developed without words. Walter drained his coffee and headed inside for breakfast, unaware that 12 Harley-Davidson motorcycles were already 50 miles away, their engines growling hungrily as they ate up the highway toward Cedar Ridge. The peaceful morning carried no hint of the storm approaching his quiet valley. As he reached his front door, Walter paused to watch Danny conclude his practice. With a series of lightning-fast movements that blurred together, then immediately returned to graceful stillness. The display was mesmerizing and somehow unsettling, like watching a sleeping predator dream of the hunt. The screen door creaked as Walter entered his kitchen, surrounded by 3 generations of family photos. His late wife Martha smiled from the mantelpiece. His son David looked proud in his army dress uniform, and granddaughter Jenny beamed from her nursing school graduation. This land, this legacy, everything worth preserving in America. In the distance, the rumble of approaching engines was still too faint to hear. 20 miles outside Cedar Ridge, 12 motorcycles thundered along Highway 287, their chrome gleaming in the morning sun. Rex Hammer Morrison led the pack, his massive frame dwarfing his Harley as leather and steel announced the Iron Wolves' arrival to any creature within 5 miles. The T6'4" with arms like tree trunks, Hammer commanded respect through calculated violence and strategic brutality. His Lieutenant Snake Rodriguez rode to his left, while Enforcer Crusher Davis flanked his right. Behind them, 9 more hardened criminals followed in perfect formation, a mobile army specializing in methamphetamine production and territorial expansion. Target confirmed. Weasel Thompson's voice crackled through Hammer's helmet radio. The gang's tech specialist had spent weeks researching local properties, analyzing county records and tax assessments. Kowalski Ranch checks all boxes. Isolated, water rights, elderly owner, minimal debt. Hammer's gray eyes studied the valley below as they crested the hill overlooking Cedar Ridge. Population 847, one part-time sheriff. Nearest DEA office 200 miles away. Perfect for their newest super lab operation. The Iron Wolves weren't typical bikers. They operated like a corporation, with Hammer's business administration background guiding their systematic approach to criminal expansion. They identified vulnerable targets, eliminated resistance through escalating intimidation, then established operations that generated millions in regional drug distribution. Elderly property owners were Hammer's specialty. Something about their dignity and resistance to authority triggered his deepest psychological wounds. Memories of foster care supervisors and teachers who'd controlled his childhood. Breaking old men who reminded him of those authority figures provided both business profit and personal satisfaction. Ranch intel confirms single occupant, Snake reported. Walter Kowalski, 72, Vietnam veteran, granddaughter in Billings. No local family support. Perfect isolation for our purposes. Hammer raised his fist as they approached Cedar Ridges. Main Street, and 12 engines revved in unison, a war cry that sent birds fleeing from the trees. The sound echoed off the mountains like thunder, announcing that the Iron Wolves had arrived to claim new territory in the valley below. Walter continued his peaceful morning routine, completely unaware that his world was about to change forever. The breakfast dishes could wait. His cattle needed checking, and the fence in the south pasture required repair. The rumble of approaching engines was still 30 minutes away, but Hammer's invasion of Cedar Ridge had already begun. Walter hammered the last fence staple into place when the thunderous roar shattered the morning quiet. 12 Harley-Davidsons turned into his driveway like mechanical predators, their riders dismounting with practiced intimidation tactics that set Walter's military instincts on high alert. The leader approached with false friendliness that couldn't mask the menace in his cold gray eyes. "Morning, old-timer. Name's Rex Morrison, but folks call me Hammer." His massive frame cast a shadow across Walter's weathered face. "I'm what you might call a businessman, interested in purchasing property in this area." Walter straightened too. His full height, arthritis forgotten. "Property's not for sale. Now, don't be hasty." Hammer's smile never reached his eyes. "I'm offering 200,000 cash. That's generous for land this far from civilization. 200,000 for $1 million ranch." Walter's jaw tightened. "I said it's not for sale." The bikers spread out with military precision, some examining Walter's equipment with mock interest, others positioning themselves to block escape routes. Snake Rodriguez made a show of studying the barn, while Crusher Davis deliberately stepped on Martha's flower garden, his boot crushing petals into the dirt. "See, here's the thing," Hammer continued, his voice dropping to barely controlled menace. "This area's changing. Accidents happen to stubborn folks who don't adapt to new circumstances. Cattle get sick, barns catch fire, old men take falls they don't get up from." Walter recognized tactical positioning from his Vietnam days. 12 armed men, escape routes blocked, superior numbers, and firepower. But he'd faced worse odds in the Mekong Delta and survived. "I've been threatened by professionals, son. You don't scare me." Hammer's mask slipped, revealing the psychopath underneath. He nodded to his men, who immediately began their message, overturning Walter's tool shed, smashing his mailbox with a tire iron, cutting fence wire in 3 places. The destruction was methodical, efficient, designed to demonstrate power while stopping short of serious felonies. From his garden next door, Danny observed the entire encounter. His morning Tai Chi had evolved into combat assessment, studying each biker's physical characteristics, weapon placement, and psychological profiles. His movements became sharper, more focused, as he cataloged threats and calculated response scenarios. "This is just a taste, old man," Hammer said, swinging back onto his Harley. "You've got 24 hours to reconsider my generous offer. Next time we visit, the conversation might not be so polite." The motorcycles roared to life and departed, leaving Walter standing amid the wreckage of his morning's work. As the sound faded, Danny approached the fence line with quiet determination. "You okay, Walter?" "Been better." Walter surveyed the damage, his military bearing intact despite the assault. "But I've been worse too." Mind if I help with the cleanup? For the first time in 18 months, the two neighbors worked side by side, both understanding that something significant had begun. The morning sun felt different now, colder, more threatening, as Walter discovered what the iron wolves had done during the night. 3 of his prize Angus cattle lay dead in the south pasture, their lives ended by high-powered rifles. Blood-red paint spelled "Last Warning" across his barn in letters 3 feet tall. Walter knelt beside Gertie, a cow he'd raised from a calf, her gentle brown eyes now vacant. His grief transformed into rage, but 45 years of experience had taught him the difference between productive anger and destructive fury. He photographed the scene methodically, documenting the evidence before calling Sheriff Pete Garrison. The sheriff arrived within an hour, but his nervous energy and avoided eye contact told Walter everything he needed to know. Garrison had heard about the iron wolves from other counties. Their reputation preceded them like a plague warning. "I'll file a report," Garrison mumbled, scribbling notes without meeting Walter's gaze. "But Walter, maybe you should consider their offer seriously. These aren't local troublemakers we're dealing with. Are you telling me to surrender to criminals? I'm telling you to be practical. I've got 1 deputy and a part-time dispatcher. They've got military-grade weapons and no conscience." The phone rang as Garrison departed. Jenny's voice carried worry across the miles from Billings. "Grandpa, I heard rumors about motorcycle gangs in your area. Maybe it's time to sell the ranch and move closer to me. I'm not running from bullies, sweetheart. This land is your inheritance, your children's legacy. Some things are worth fighting for. But you're 72, and you're all alone out there." "I'm not alone." As if summoned by those words, Danny appeared with 2 cups of coffee and an expression Walter recognized from Special Forces operators. "Saw the sheriff leave. Everything under control. Depends on your definition of control." Walter accepted the coffee gratefully. "They killed my cattle last night, painted threats on my barn, escalating the pressure." Danny studied the crime scene with professional assessment, noting sight lines, approach routes, and tactical considerations. "You have security cameras?" "Never. Needed them before." "You do now." "I've got some equipment that might help: motion sensors, infrared cameras, communication gear. Some experience with dangerous situations." Walter caught the careful phrasing. "What kind of experience?" "The kind that taught me bullies only understand one language." They spent the afternoon installing security equipment with military precision. Danny's suggestions were surprisingly sophisticated: overlapping coverage zones, redundant communication systems, defensive positioning. Walter began to suspect his neighbor's background included more than gardening and morning exercises. Evening approached, motion sensors detected movement in the tree line. Through night vision binoculars, they observed 4 bikers conducting surveillance from concealed positions. "They're professionals," Danny observed, his voice carrying a new edge. "But they're not the only ones." "What do you mean?" Danny's smile held no warmth. "Tomorrow, things will get worse. But you won't face it alone." The way he said it reminded Walter of promises made by warriors who kept their word regardless of cost. Main Street Cedar Ridge felt different when Snake Rodriguez and 3 Iron Wolves entered Murphy's diner at 11 a.m. Conversations died mid-sentence, as leather boots struck linoleum with deliberate menace. Dolores Patterson gripped her coffee pot tighter, while rancher Bill Hutchins studied his eggs like they held state secrets. Snake slid into the corner booth with tactical precision, positioning himself to observe both entrances while his men blocked escape routes. The questioning began immediately, casual inquiries wrapped in steel-edged threats. "That old rancher causing you folks problems?" Snake asked Dolores, his smile never reaching cold eyes. "Heard he's been stubborn about some business proposals." "Walter's a good man," Dolores stammered. "Minds his own business." "What about his neighbor? The quiet one with the garden?" Hardware store owner Frank Kowalski shifted uncomfortably. "Danny keeps to himself. Moved here maybe 18 months ago. Pays cash for everything. Real polite." Through his phone conversation with Hammer, Snake revealed their true intention. This wasn't simple land acquisition. They wanted Walter's ranch as headquarters for the largest methamphetamine operation in 3 states. The isolation was perfect, water supply ideal for chemical processing, and an elderly owner provided perfect cover for their criminal empire. Hammer arrived personally, studying Walter's property with a businessman's calculating gaze. His hatred of authority figures made Walter's military bearing personally offensive. Another old man who thought rules and honor meant something in the real world. Unknown to the bikers, Danny conducted counter-surveillance from multiple positions throughout town. His movement techniques suggested extensive covert training as he photographed license plates, identified weapons, and mapped communication patterns without being detected. Dr. Beverly Murphy refused intimidation when questioned about Walter's health and daily routines. Her defiance earned Snake's attention as someone requiring special handling later. She immediately warned Walter about their medical inquiries. Despite escalating pressure, Walter remained determined. His call to retired Colonel Robert Hayes brought offers of military assistance, but Walter declined external help. This was his fight, his land, his responsibility. The community fractured under pressure, some wanting Walter to sell for everyone's safety, others supporting his property rights, most too frightened to choose sides. This division weakened potential. Resistance to criminal occupation. At sunset, Hammer delivered his ultimatum personally: sell within 24 hours or face consequences. As his men systematically damaged property, breaking windows, slashing tires, destroying equipment, Danny watched from his house, hands clenched into fists. When Hammer noticed Danny observing, their eyes locked across the distance. Something predatory passed between them, mutual recognition of dangerous opponents preparing for inevitable conflict. 4:30 a.m. found Walter sleepless, listening to engines circling his property like mechanical vultures. 18 hours remained until Hammer's deadline, and the psychological warfare was working: exhaustion, stress, and isolation wearing down his resolve like water against stone. At dawn, 6 bikers attacked while Walter fed his remaining cattle. This wasn't intimidation. Crusher Davis's fists broke ribs while Snake Rodriguez filmed the assault as evidence of Walter's resistance. The beating was systematic, professional, designed to hospitalize without killing, despite broken bones and blood in his mouth. Walter refused to sign transfer papers. His military training surfaced from 45-year-old memories: name, rank, serial number. He'd survived Viet Cong interrogation. These criminals wouldn't break him now. Danny discovered Walter unconscious in the pasture 2 hours later. The sight of his friend's injuries cracked his peaceful facade, revealing controlled fury that transformed his entire demeanor. He photographed Walter's wounds with medical precision, documenting evidence while calculating revenge. Dr. Murphy treated Walter at Cedar Ridge's small clinic: 3 broken ribs, severe bruising, concussion requiring hospitalization. She'd seen domestic violence before, but nothing this systematic and brutal. Her photographs would serve as evidence if federal authorities ever arrived. Sheriff Garrison's hospital visit proved his complete inadequacy. He suggested federal assistance, but made clear he couldn't protect Walter against such overwhelming force. Local law enforcement had effectively collapsed under criminal pressure. Danny's transformation was complete when he visited Walter's bedside. Gone was the peaceful gardener. Someone calculating and dangerous had taken his place. Walter recognized. The look from Special Forces operators pushed beyond breaking points. Jenny received news of the assault and immediately drove from Billings, her arrival adding emotional stakes to Walter's fight. She represented everything he was fighting to preserve: family, future, the bloodline that had worked this land for 3 generations. News of Walter's beating galvanized some townspeople while terrifying others. Dr. Murphy led those supporting resistance, while most pressured Walter to surrender for community safety. The town's moral character was being tested under fire. As visiting hours ended, Danny sat alone with unconscious Walter, speaking quietly in Cantonese, what sounded like ancient vows of protection and vengeance. When Walter briefly awakened, Danny's promise was simple: they made a mistake. They hurt my friend. The way he said friend carried weight of warrior codes older than America itself. Walter saw something in Danny's eyes that made him understand his neighbor was far more than he appeared. Dawn brought no peace to Danny's garden. His Tai Chi had evolved into combat forms, movements sharper, more focused, preparing for violence he'd hoped to leave behind forever. 18 months of peaceful retirement were ending. Through internal reflection, glimpses of Danny's past emerged: years of training, countless fights, the weight of violence that drove him to seek Montana's silence. Walter's injuries had awakened, something he'd buried beneath meditation and morning exercises at 10 a.m. Danny entered Murphy's diner, where three Iron Wolves bragged about teaching the old man respect. Tank Morrison, Viper Jackson, and Bulldog Stevens owned the restaurant's atmosphere through pure menace, their crude jokes about finishing what they started silencing other customers. Danny approached their table with conversational politeness. "Gentlemen, I'd appreciate an apology for your actions against my neighbor." Their laughter died when they saw his eyes, calm but predatory, like a sleeping tiger suddenly alert. Tank threw the first punch. Danny redirected it into Viper's solar plexus. Bulldog reached for his knife. Danny's elbow strike dropped him instantly. What happened next defied belief. Danny moved with inhuman speed and precision, his Wing Chun training unleashing chain punches and devastating elbow strikes that neutralized three dangerous criminals in 12 seconds. Every movement was economical, precise, devastatingly effective. The diner's patrons witnessed something extraordinary. Dolores Patterson described movements too fast to follow. Former Golden Gloves boxer Bill Hutchins said he'd never seen anything comparable. Hardware store owner Frank Kowalski called it like watching a movie. Dr. Murphy treated the injured bikers, dislocated shoulders, broken noses, severe bruising, but no permanent damage. The surgical precision of Danny's strikes suggested extensive medical knowledge combined with martial arts mastery. News spread through Cedar Ridge within hours. Some townspeople felt inspired by Danny's defense of Walter. Others feared inevitable retaliation. The community realized they had a protector, but at what cost? Hammer's reaction mixed fury with intrigue. The descriptions suggested someone with extraordinary training, not just a skilled fighter, but a warrior whose abilities transcended normal human limits. That evening, Danny visited hospitalized Walter, who asked directly, "Who are you, really?" Danny's slight smile carried decades of experience. Someone who's tired of watching bullies hurt good people. As Danny departed, Hammer's motorcycles circled the hospital like mechanical predators. The war had officially begun, and both sides understood there was no retreat from what was coming. The quiet gardener was gone forever. The warrior had returned 11 p.m. at the abandoned Riverside Motel. Hammer's temporary headquarters buzzed with desperate activity. Weasel Thompson had spent 12 hours investigating Danny using facial recognition software, criminal databases, and every digital resource available to modern criminals. The search results were impossible. Danny wasn't just a skilled fighter. He was Donnie Yen, the legendary martial arts movie star. Photos, filmographies, and fight scenes from dozens of movies confirmed the incredible truth. Cedar Ridge's Quiet Gardener was one of the world's most famous action heroes. Hammer's motivation transformed completely. As a secret martial arts movie fan since childhood, he'd fantasized about proving himself against legendary fighters. This wasn't about Walter's ranch anymore. It was about defeating a living legend and achieving immortal fame. The Iron Wolves split between fear and excitement. Some wanted immediate retreat, recognizing they were completely outclassed. Others, led by Snake Rodriguez, saw opportunity for criminal fame. They could become the gang that destroyed Donnie Yen. Weasel compiled Danny's fighting style from movie footage: Wing Chun, boxing, MMA, weapons training, and supernatural speed that defied normal human limitations. Hammer studied every frame obsessively, searching for weaknesses in a warrior who seemed invincible. Through research, Danny's recent history emerged: semi-retirement from movies, exhaustion with Hollywood, violence, his move to Montana seeking peace after 40 years of cinematic combat. He'd come to Cedar Ridge to escape everything now following him. Walter's hospital release brought Jenny's protective care, but also his stubborn insistence on returning to his ranch despite Dr. Murphy's medical warnings. His granddaughter reluctantly agreed but demanded he accept neighbors' help. Word of Danny's true identity spread through Cedar Ridge like wildfire. Disbelief, starstruck excitement, fear about being caught between criminals and a movie star. The quiet community had become ground zero for an impossible confrontation. Hammer developed new strategy. Instead of simply eliminating obstacles, he'd orchestrate a public confrontation that would make him famous as the man who defeated Donnie Yen. He began recruiting additional gang members from across the region. Alone in his house, Danny faced reality that his peaceful retirement was over. Studying movie posters and championship trophies, he understood that everything he'd tried to escape had followed him to Montana. The violence he'd hoped to leave behind was now necessary to protect his friend. At midnight, Danny practiced combat forms under moonlight, movements that were poetry and destruction combined. From darkness beyond his property, bikers filmed his training through binoculars. The secret was out, and war was inevitable. 5 a.m. brought no peaceful Tai Chi to Danny's garden. Instead, intense combat training, speed drills against wooden targets, precision strikes that splintered boards, and weapons familiarization that suggested extensive military experience. The warrior had fully awakened that Danny's preparation was methodical and professional. Topographical maps covered his kitchen table, marked with strategic positions and escape routes. He created detailed profiles of each gang member, studying their behavioral patterns and fighting capabilities through binoculars and telephoto photography. Walter returned to his ranch despite Jenny's protests, his injuries slowing movement but strengthening resolve. 3 generations of Kowalski blood had worked this soil. No criminal organization would drive him away now. Danny began teaching Walter adapted self-defense techniques, joint locks modified for arthritic hands, leverage moves that used opponents' momentum against superior strength. Their training sessions became bonding rituals where military experiences merged with martial arts philosophy. Cedar Ridge fractured into 3 distinct factions. Dr. Murphy led those supporting Walter's right to his property. Sheriff Garrison represented residents wanting everyone to leave until the crisis passed. Hardware store owner Frank Kowalski demanded Walter surrender to protect community safety. Jenny transformed from worried granddaughter to active participant, her trauma nursing experience providing crucial medical expertise. She stocked supplies for treating combat injuries while offering tactical insights about human anatomy and pain management. Hammer's recruitment efforts brought 20 additional bikers from 3 states, drawn by promises of money, fame, and participation in defeating a legendary martial artist. The Iron Wolves now numbered 42 dangerous criminals. Both sides conducted sophisticated surveillance operations. Danny employed techniques learned from movie stunt coordinators and real martial artists, while Hammer used criminal intelligence, methods developed through years of evading law enforcement. Dr. Murphy became Danny's medical advisor, providing anatomical information that helped him target pressure points and nerve clusters for maximum effectiveness with minimum permanent damage. Her medical ethics conflicted with tactical necessities. 3 new bikers tested Danny's defenses during a midnight probe. Danny intercepted them in complete darkness using stealth techniques that left them unconscious and zip-tied on Sheriff Garrison's doorstep with a note, "Return to sender." At sunset, Danny and Walter watched motorcycle headlights gather on surrounding hills. 32 engines created threatening thunder that echoed off mountains, surrounding their properties with mechanical predators. Walter asked quietly, "Are we going to survive this?" Danny's response carried absolute certainty. "We're not just going to survive. We're going to win." 2 a.m. found Danny moving through darkness like a ghost, his black clothing and silent techniques making him nearly invisible against the mountain landscape. The transition from defensive to offensive operations had begun. Danny systematically sabotaged Iron Wolf's equipment using methods that suggested extensive covert training: sugar in gas tanks, cut brake lines, disabled ignition systems. His approach was methodical and professional, maximizing disruption while minimizing exposure to enemy contact. Encountering perimeter guards Razor Martinez and Crowbar Phillips, Danny demonstrated Wing Chun's perfection for close-quarters combat. Chain punches and elbow strikes neutralized both sentries within 30 seconds without triggering alarms or alerting other gang members. Danny employed psychological warfare alongside physical sabotage, arranging unconscious guards in humiliating positions with notes mocking their incompetence. The message was clear: nowhere was safe from his reach. During infiltration, Danny discovered the gang's mobile methamphetamine laboratory hidden in modified RVs. He photographed equipment and processes, gathering federal evidence while planning systematic destruction of their criminal empire. Morning revealed extensive sabotage, 12 disabled motorcycles for hospitalized guards, compromised security systems. Hammer realized he wasn't facing an actor, but someone with genuine military training and tactical expertise. Word of Danny's night raids spread through Cedar Ridge by noon. Some townspeople felt inspired by his proactive defense. Others feared escalating violence would bring federal attention and destroy their quiet community, frustrated by inability to locate or stop Danny. Snake Rodriguez led 6 bikers in attacking Murphy's diner during lunch hour, intending to punish civilians for supporting their enemies. Danny arrived as bikers terrorized customers, creating a confined space combat scenario with innocent bystanders. The fight showcased his precision and control. Defeating 6 armed opponents without endangering civilians required supernatural skill and environmental awareness. The diner fight became a masterpiece of controlled violence. Danny used tables, chairs, and kitchen equipment as weapons and shields, his movements flowing like water around obstacles while strikes landed with mechanical precision. Dr. Murphy treated defeated bikers while secretly admiring Danny's surgical precision. Every injury was strategically placed to disable without permanent damage, revealing Danny's extensive understanding of human anatomy. AS ambulances removed injured gang members. Hammer arrived with remaining forces to survey the destruction, broken furniture, unconscious men, and a community beginning to rally behind their protector. Looking directly at Danny, Hammer issued his challenge. "Tonight we finish this." Danny's response was equally direct. "I'm ready." The final confrontation was set, but both warriors understood the real battle was just beginning. 6 p.m. brought Hammer's reinforcements. 20 additional bikers from Iron Wolf's chapters across 3 states, their motorcycles creating a thunderous parade through Cedar Ridge's main street. The gang now numbered 42 members, effectively placing the town under martial law. Hammer deployed his expanded force using military tactics, establishing overlapping observation posts around Walter's ranch and Danny's property. Guard rotations, radio communication, and night vision equipment created a perimeter that should have been impossible to penetrate. The massive gang presence terrorized Cedar Ridge into submission. Businesses closed early, residents stayed indoors, and the few who ventured outside moved quickly while avoiding eye contact. The town had become a prisoner of criminal occupation. From his house, Danny studied the siege through high-powered binoculars, his assessment grimly realistic. 42 opponents with superior numbers and tactical positioning. Traditional approaches wouldn't work. He needed terrain, darkness, and psychological warfare to level impossible odds. Despite being surrounded and outnumbered, Walter refused evacuation offers from Sheriff Garrison and Jenny. He loaded hunting rifles and prepared defensive positions throughout his house, drawing on Vietnam combat experience to create overlapping fields of fire. Jenny converted the ranch's storm cellar into a field hospital, stocking medical supplies and coordinating with Dr. Murphy for treating inevitable casualties. Her trauma nursing experience became crucial for survival planning. At 9 p.m., Hammer launched a probing attack using 12 bikers with suppressing fire, designed to test defenses and force Danny into open ground where superior numbers could overwhelm his legendary abilities. Danny and Walter coordinated defense using hand signals and predetermined positions. Walter provided covering fire with his hunting rifle while Danny moved between concealed positions, using stealth and speed to attack exposed gang members. The ranch became an urban warfare battlefield with tactics reminiscent of house-to-house fighting. Danny used buildings, vehicles, and terrain features to create advantageous engagement scenarios, his martial arts training adapting perfectly to close-quarters combat. The first assault resulted in 8 bikers requiring medical treatment and 1 hospitalization. Danny suffered a minor gunshot wound to his shoulder, while Walter aggravated previously injured ribs, both men realizing they couldn't sustain prolonged combat. Frustrated by unexpected resistance, Hammer eliminated any pretense of restraint, ordering lethal force and threatening to burn down the ranch with Walter and Danny inside. The conflict had escalated beyond intimidation to attempted murder. At midnight, flares illuminated the property as Hammer's voice echoed through a bullhorn. "You have until dawn to surrender. After that, we're coming with everything we have." Danny tended his wound while checking ammunition supplies. Walter sat cleaning his rifle. Both understood that sunrise would bring a battle for survival against overwhelming odds. 1 a.m. found Danny applying camouflage paint with ritualistic precision, transforming from movie star to special operations warrior. His equipment, night vision goggles, tactical knives, improvised weapons, suggested training far beyond martial arts instruction. Danny studied siege positions through thermal imaging borrowed from Walter's hunting gear, identifying guard rotations and communication patterns. His infiltration plan was surgical, maximum disruption with minimal exposure to overwhelming enemy numbers, moving through darkness using advanced techniques that suggested military training. Danny avoided motion sensors and bypassed guards without triggering alarms. His movement was completely silent, more shadow than substance. Approaching the Eastern Guard post, Danny encountered 3 sentries maintaining overwatch positions. Using Wing Chun joint locks combined with military takedown techniques, he neutralized all 3 within 30 seconds without alerting other gang members. Over 2 hours, Danny systematically eliminated perimeter guards using non-lethal techniques, pressure point strikes, chokeholds, joint manipulations that left opponents unconscious but alive. His methods combined martial arts precision with tactical efficiency. Guards began finding unconscious comrades arranged in humiliating positions with mocking notes. The psychological warfare proved as effective as physical attacks. Remaining sentries became nervous, jumpy, and prone to crucial mistakes. Danny disabled communications equipment, vehicles, and weapons using techniques suggesting extensive technical training. Motorcycles wouldn't start, radios broadcast static, and weapons jammed at critical moments. The gang's technological advantages vanished. From his house, Walter provided diversionary fire and communication support using hunting rifles and ham radio equipment. His military experience proved invaluable for coordinating complex tactical operations with minimal resources. The AS guards discovered sabotage and missing personnel. Remaining bikers shifted from siege tactics to active hunting. Danny had to avoid 25 armed opponents in increasingly difficult terrain while continuing offensive operations. Cornered by 5 bikers near the creek, Danny unleashed full martial arts abilities in extended combat, showcasing every aspect of his training. Wing Chun chain punches, MMA ground fighting, weapon disarmament, environmental combat using rocks and branches. As dawn approached, Danny executed fighting withdrawal toward Walter's ranch. He'd eliminated or disabled 23 of 42 opponents, but sustained multiple minor injuries from 6 hours of continuous combat. At sunrise, Danny reached Walter's property bleeding and exhausted. Behind him, the Iron Wolves' camp was chaos, unconscious guards, sabotaged equipment, shattered confidence. Hammer screamed orders at his remaining 19 men while Danny and Walter prepared defensive positions. The siege had reversed, but the predator-prey relationship had fundamentally changed. 7 a.m. brought Jenny's drive from Billings, unaware of the night's combat. Her route passed through Iron Wolves checkpoints where desperate bikers recognized Walter's granddaughter. Snake Rodriguez made a split-second decision that would escalate everything beyond control. 3 bikers forced Jenny's car off Highway 287, 5 miles outside Cedar Ridge. Her nursing training included basic self-defense, but Crusher Davis and Tank Morrison overpowered her through sheer brutality. They dragged her to an abandoned mine shaft serving as backup headquarters. Walter's world shattered when Jenny's panicked phone call cut to static. The fight had been about property and principle. Now it concerned family, everything he'd fought to preserve across 3 generations. His granddaughter represented his bloodline's future. News of the kidnapping triggered something primal in Danny that transcended tactical considerations. His calm, controlled demeanor cracked, revealing protective instincts that made the legendary martial artist more dangerous than ever. She wasn't just Walter's granddaughter. She was innocent life caught in violence he'd brought to Cedar Ridge. Hammer immediately recognized the kidnapping's strategic value. He'd studied Danny's movies and interviews, noting strong protective instincts toward innocent people. Jenny became the perfect pressure point to manipulate his legendary opponent's psychology. Hammer contacted Danny directly, his voice carrying sadistic pleasure as he described Jenny's fate if demands weren't met. The terms were simple: Danny walks into their camp unarmed, and Ginny goes free. Refusal meant watching her suffer before dying. Danny faced an impossible choice between tactical advantage and moral obligation. His training said never negotiate with terrorists, but conscience demanded protecting innocent life. Walter argued for rescue mission, but Danny knew the risks were too great. News of Ginny's kidnapping galvanized Cedar Ridge's residents. Dr. Murphy organized search teams, while Sheriff Garrison finally called federal assistance. However, help wouldn't arrive for hours, and Ginny might not survive that long in captivity. Ginny demonstrated unexpected courage. Her medical training helped assess captors' weaknesses: Snake's diabetes, Crusher's shoulder injury, Tank's obvious concussion. She gathered intelligence for potential escape. Danny studied the mine shaft using geological surveys and satellite imagery. The terrain offered advantages: multiple entrances, limited visibility, structural weaknesses. But Ginny's presence eliminated most tactical options. Walter volunteered to exchange himself for Ginny, arguing his life was nearly over while hers was beginning. Danny refused, understanding Hammer wanted him specifically. As afternoon approached, Ginny's situation became desperate. Her captors were frustrated, dangerous men who might harm her regardless of negotiations. Time was running out for everyone. 4:30 p.m. found the abandoned Copper Creek mine transformed into an arena, Hammers. Remaining bikers forming a circle around the entrance. Danny approached alone, hands empty, but eyes calculating every position, weapon, and escape route. This wasn't surrender, it was tactical positioning. Hammer emerged dragging Ginny as insurance, his terms theatrical and grandiose. Single combat to the death. Winner takes everything. If Danny won, Ginny and Walter went free and Iron Wolves left Montana forever. If Hammer won, he killed Danny and claimed the ranch. Ginny showed rough treatment but remained defiant, her medical training helping assess captors' capabilities. She'd managed to conceal a scalpel from her emergency kit. Not just a victim, but a survivor preparing to fight. Despite danger, most of Cedar Ridge's population gathered to witness the confrontation. Dr. Murphy brought medical supplies. Sheriff Garrison finally called backup, and previously neutral townspeople understood their community's future hung in the balance. Unknown to Danny, Hammer had spent months preparing for this moment. He'd studied Wing Chun techniques, trained with former military personnel, and equipped himself with concealed weapons. This wasn't just ego, it was calculated attempt to defeat a legend. Hammer attempted psychological warfare, describing plans for Ginny and Walter after Danny's death. His taunts revealed deep issues: need to prove himself against authority figures, and successful people representing everything he couldn't achieve legitimately. Danny remained calm despite provocations, using meditation techniques to center himself while conducting tactical analysis, studying Hammer's stance, identifying weapons, calculating distances to Ginny and exit routes. Walter arrived with his hunting rifle despite orders to stay away, taking overwatch position on a nearby ridge. He wouldn't interfere in single combat, but provided protection against treachery. His presence gave Danny additional confidence. Hammer's bikers created a 30-foot fighting circle with Ginny held at knife point outside the ring. Rules were simple: no weapons, no interference, fight until one couldn't continue. Hammer had no intention of honoring these terms. The fight began with formal introductions feeling like ancient gladiatorial combat. Hammer played to his audience, boasting about training and intention to become famous as Donnie Yen's killer. Danny conserved energy through silence. Initial exchanges revealed Hammer as genuinely skilled, not just a brawler, but someone with real martial arts training. His combinations were crude but powerful, and reach advantage created problems for Danny's close-range techniques. The watching crowd became symbolic, bikers cheering their leader, while Cedar Ridge residents prayed for Danny's victory. Combat represented eternal struggle between civilization and chaos. As fighting reached peak intensity, both men were bloodied and exhausted. Danny appeared gaining upper hand through superior technique and conditioning, victory seeming assured until Ginny screamed warning about the sniper positioned above. The rifle shot echoed across Copper Creek mine as Danny staggered, blood streaming from his shoulder wound. Hammer's triumphant roar filled the air, while hidden sniper Viper Jackson emerged from rocks with smoking rifle. Honorable single combat had become execution. Despite the gunshot wound, Danny remained standing. Years of conditioning and pain tolerance training allowed him to function with damaged shoulder. His left arm hung useless, but his right hand still moved with deadly precision. Believing victory assured, Hammer approached the wounded Danny with casual arrogance, wanting to savor this moment, defeating a living legend. His monologue revealed years of resentment against successful people and desperate need for recognition. Still held captive, Ginny used concealed scalpel to cut restraints while captors focused on Danny's apparent defeat. Her medical training helped assess that Danny's wound, while serious, hadn't hit vital arteries. He remained dangerous if given opportunity. From his ridge position, Walter took a long-range shot that killed Sniper Viper Jackson. At 72, his marksmanship remained excellent from Vietnam service. However, this intervention ended any pretense about fair combat that Hammer's remaining bikers closed in, believing they were finishing a wounded enemy. They were unprepared for what happened next, a master martial artist fighting not just for life, but for innocent people he'd sworn to protect. Danny's fighting style adapted to injury, emphasizing kicks, single-handed techniques, and environmental weapons. Wing Chun training proved perfect for one-handed combat, using opponents' momentum while conserving energy. Despite being outnumbered and wounded, Danny systematically defeated attackers. His precision targeting of pressure points and joints disabled opponents quickly while avoiding prolonged exchanges that would exhaust him. As his men fell around him, Hammer realized he wasn't facing a wounded actor. He was confronting a true warrior who became more dangerous when cornered. His careful plans crumbled as Danny proved skill could overcome numerical superiority. Using chaos as cover, Ginny broke free and began treating Danny's wound while he continued fighting. Her medical intervention stopped bleeding and provided temporary pain relief, allowing Danny to maintain effectiveness. Cedar Ridge residents actively supported Danny's fight, providing warnings about flanking attacks, throwing rocks at bikers, and creating distractions that helped level odds. The entire community united behind their protector. As last of his men fell unconscious, Hammer faced Danny alone. Both warriors were exhausted, bloody, and driven by forces beyond simple combat. Hammer by need to prove himself, Danny by protective instincts. The climactic fight between Danny and Hammer pushed both beyond physical limits. Danny appeared gaining decisive advantage, his superior technique overcoming Hammer's size and strength. Just as he prepared the finishing move, Tank Morrison, thought unconscious, rose behind Danny with tire iron. Ginny screamed warning, but too late. The iron bar crashed into Danny's head, and he collapsed as darkness closed over his vision. Danny lay motionless in dirt, blood trickling from his head wound. The tire iron blow left him unconscious and possibly seriously injured. Hammer stood over his fallen opponent, finally achieving victory he'd craved since learning Danny's identity. Surviving Iron Wolves celebrated their leader's triumph with savage joy. They defeated a legend through superior numbers and treachery, posing for photographs with unconscious Danny for criminal recruitment and personal aggrandizement. Tank Morrison and Crusher Davis dragged Ginny back into captivity, their grip tighter and more brutal than before. Her brief escape earned their anger, and they took pleasure restraining her with zip ties that cut into her wrists. Sheriff Garrison's belated arrival led to Walter's capture as he attempted sniper support from the ridge. At 72, he couldn't escape younger, motorized pursuers on foot. His hunting rifle was confiscated, and he was brought to the mine shaft in handcuffs. With victory assured, Hammer revealed his complete psychological profile, not just criminal, but sadistic psychopath taking pleasure in breaking strong people. His plans for Danny, Walter, and Ginny involved prolonged torture before eventual execution. Cedar Ridge residents watched helplessly as their protector was defeated and neighbors captured. Sheriff Garrison had finally called federal assistance, but help wouldn't arrive for hours. The town's brief hope was crushed. Medical assessment by captured Dr. Murphy revealed Danny had suffered severe concussion but no skull fracture. His shoulder wound needed immediate attention, but captors refused medical care. He drifted in and out of consciousness, appearing defeated. Standing over bound Danny, Hammer delivered victory speech revealing deep psychological damage. His hatred of successful people stemmed from childhood abuse and lifetime of failure. Defeating Danny represented conquering everyone who ever made him feel inferior. Iron Wolves began systematically torturing captives to break spirits before killing them. Walter endured beatings with veteran stoicism, while Ginny used medical knowledge to minimize damage to herself and others. In semi-conscious state, Danny experienced flashbacks to martial arts training, movie career, and reasons for seeking peace in Montana. Physical pain forced him to confront fundamental questions about violence, justice, and responsibility. Afternoon turned evening. Federal authorities finally arrived, but too late and too few. 3 FBI agents found themselves facing dozen well-armed bikers in defensive positions, forcing tactical withdrawal. Hammer's torture escalated as he attempted breaking Danny's spirit completely. He forced Danny to watch Walter's beating and threatened increasingly savage treatment of Ginny. The legendary martial artist appeared utterly defeated. As darkness fell, Hammer announced intention to execute all 3 captives at midnight, live-streaming their deaths on social media. He wanted the world witnessing his triumph over a legend. 11:30 p.m., captives were dragged to mine shaft entrance for execution. Danny appeared barely conscious. Walter maintained military dignity despite injuries, and Ginny fought restraints with desperate courage. As Hammer raised his pistol toward Danny's head, he delivered final taunt. "Any last words from the great Donnie Yen?" Danny's eyes suddenly focused with laser intensity, whispering something in Cantonese that sounded like prayer, but was actually beginning of ancient warriors' meditation. 11:45 p.m. found the mine shaft entrance bathed in harsh floodlights. As Hammer's remaining bikers prepared for execution, Danny, Walter, and Ginny knelt with bound hands, facing what appeared to be certain death, while livestream cameras recorded everything for Hammer's global audience. Despite injuries and restraints, Danny entered deep meditative state taught by Wing Chun masters decades ago. The ancient technique allowed warriors to transcend physical limitations through pure mental discipline, his breathing becoming controlled and awareness expanding beyond immediate pain. Even facing execution, Walter maintained military bearing from Vietnam training. He recited name, rank, and serial number, the same response given Vietnamese interrogators 45 years ago. His example of unbreakable courage inspired both Danny and Ginny through demonstration of unconquerable spirit. Using nursing training, Ginny quietly evaluated everyone's injuries and tactical situation while identifying weapons, exit routes, and captors' physical condition. Her assessment revealed several bikers were injured, exhausted, and careless from overconfidence in their victory. Power had completely corrupted Hammer's judgment. His obsession with triumphant moment made him ignore basic security protocols, while his men grew equally overconfident, believing their victory was complete and enemies were helpless. In Cedar Ridge, the entire population maintained vigil for captured neighbors. Dr. Murphy coordinated with federal authorities, providing medical information about captives' conditions while the town united in prayer and determination. FBI tactical teams surrounded the mine area but couldn't approach without risking hostages' lives. Agent Sarah Collins studied blueprints and satellite imagery, searching for assault options that wouldn't result in civilian casualties. Through meditation, Danny accessed memories of deepest martial arts training, not movie choreography, but genuine warrior philosophy passed down through generations. He began understanding that true strength came from protecting others, not personal achievement. Danny's near-death experience triggered spiritual awakening that transcended physical condition. His injuries became irrelevant as he tapped into philosophical core of martial arts, the principle that warrior's spirit was more powerful than his body. Using microscopic movements masked by meditation, Danny worked restraints loose. Years of flexibility training and rope knowledge allowed crucial centimeters of movement without alerting captors. Hammer checked his pistol while preparing for execution, wanting perfect camera angles for social media triumph. His obsession with documentation created tactical vulnerabilities as he focused on performance rather than security. Walter whispered final words to Danny and Ginny, not goodbyes, but tactical information about captors' positions and weapons. His military experience provided crucial intelligence for any escape attempt. At 11:59 p.m., Hammer raised his pistol toward Danny's head while remaining bikers cheered. But as gun barrel touched Danny's temple, his eyes opened with supernatural clarity. Midnight exactly found Hammer's finger tightening on the trigger as Danny's meditation reached its deepest level. Time seemed to slow as he accessed philosophical core of martial arts training. Understanding that true power came from purpose, not strength, that Danny's consciousness expanded beyond his injured body to embrace the warrior's ultimate truth. He wasn't fighting for himself, but for innocent people needing protection. This realization transformed his pain into power and desperation into determination. Through deep meditation, Danny recalled teachings of his first Wing Chun master, an elderly man who survived Japanese occupation of Hong Kong. The master taught that when warriors fight for others, their spirit becomes unbreakable regardless of physical limitations. Observing Walter's unshakable courage under torture, Danny understood that true strength wasn't about martial arts technique. It was about refusing to surrender principles, even facing death. Walter's military bearing became model for spiritual resistance. Using imperceptible movements perfected during meditation, Danny finally worked restraints loose. His hands were free, but he remained motionless, waiting for perfect moment to act. His patience demonstrated complete mastery over physical impulses. Jenny had also been working medical knowledge to prepare for action. She'd identified pressure points on nearby guards and located improvised weapons. Her transformation from victim to fighter paralleled Danny's spiritual awakening. Hammer's obsession with recording Danny's death made him careless about security. He positioned himself within Danny's reach while his remaining men focused on camera rather than their prisoner. Victory had made them vulnerable. Federal positioning outside mine perimeter had identified assault routes, but remained stalled by hostage concerns. Agent Collins coordinated with local authorities while waiting for opportunity that might never come. Cedar Ridge's population maintained vigil at the town's small church. Their prayers and determination created spiritual energy that seemed to reach across miles to the mine shaft. In deepest meditative state, Danny faced ultimate warrior's decision. He could escape alone and save himself, or risk everything to protect Walter and Jenny. His choice defined his character and determined his destiny. Danny began mental preparation for what Wing Chun masters called the final form, fighting technique that transcended physical limitations by channeling pure spiritual energy. Not supernatural, but absolute peak of human potential. As Hammer's pistol pressed against his temple, Danny's entire life experience crystallized into this single moment. His movie career, martial arts training, search for peace, everything had led to this test of ultimate courage. With gun barrel touching his skull, Danny opened his eyes and looked directly into Hammer's face. What Hammer saw wasn't fear or defeat, but gaze of awakened warrior who had transcended physical limitations. Danny spoke quietly in English. "You made a mistake. You hurt my friends." 12:01 a.m. brought Danny's lightning movement as Hammer realized too late that his prisoner was no longer bound. Danny's free hand struck Hammer's wrist with surgical precision, sending the pistol flying while his other hand drove into the biker's solar plexus. Danny's fighting style had transformed completely. His movements flowed like water around obstacles, strikes landed with mechanical precision, and positioning seemed almost supernatural. Meditation had unlocked capabilities beyond normal human limits. As Danny engaged guards, Jenny rolled toward Tank Morrison and used anatomical knowledge to strike his carotid artery, causing instant unconsciousness. Her medical training had become combat asset, proving knowledge was as dangerous as strength. Despite age and injuries, Walter shoulder-charged Crusher Davis, using body weight and momentum to knock the younger man off balance. His military training resurfaced as he stripped Davis of weapons and took defensive positions. Danny moved through Hammer's remaining men like force of nature. Each opponent faced not just skilled fighter, but warrior whose spiritual awakening had eliminated fear, doubt, and physical limitation. His strikes were poetry in motion. Danny's combat demonstrated highest levels of martial arts philosophy, using opponents' aggression against them, redirecting violence into non-lethal control. maintaining perfect balance between offense and defense. Every movement served greater purpose. Recovering from Danny's initial strike, Hammer retrieved shotgun and began firing wildly. His precision and control had vanished, replaced by desperate fury as he watched his empire crumble around him. The mine shaft became three-dimensional battlefield as Danny used every surface, structure, and obstacle to advantage. His movie experience with stunt choreography combined with real martial arts to create impossible-seeming movements. Danny, Walter, and Ginny coordinated actions with military unit precision. Walter provided covering fire, Ginny treated injuries, while identifying tactical opportunities, and Danny eliminated threats with surgical precision. The fight became demonstration of spiritual strength overcoming physical adversity. Danny's wounded shoulder no longer limited him because his purpose transcended personal pain. Protection of innocent people unlocked reserves of strength he never knew existed. FBI tactical teams finally received opening they needed as gunfire and explosions signaled hostages were fighting back. Agent Collins coordinated careful advance, supporting escape without endangering civilians. Hearing distant gunfire, Cedar Ridge's population mobilized to help. Dr. Murphy raced toward mine with medical supplies, while Sheriff Garrison finally found courage and headed toward battle. Sounds as last of Hammer's men fell unconscious around them. Danny, Walter, and Ginny stood together in mine shaft entrance. All three were wounded but alive, their bond forged by shared combat and mutual protection. Hammer lay groaning in dirt, his empire destroyed and legend shattered. But as they began to relax, Ginny spotted movement in shadows. Snake Rodriguez, thought dead, emerged with rifle aimed at Danny's back. Snake Rodriguez stepped from shadows, rifle trained on Danny's back. Blood streamed from head wound that should have killed him, but desperation and methamphetamine kept him functional. His finger tightened on trigger, preparing to avenge his fallen leader. Ginny spotted Snake's movement and screamed warning, but no time existed for Danny to react. The rifle shot echoed through mine shaft as Walter threw himself between Bullet and his friend, taking the round in his chest. The 72-year-old rancher collapsed, his sacrifice buying precious seconds. Seeing Walter fall triggered something primal in Danny that transcended philosophical training. His attack on Snake was swift, brutal, and final, not controlled techniques of martial artist, but protective rage of someone defending family. Ginny immediately began treating Walter's gunshot wound using field medicine techniques from trauma nursing. The bullet had punctured his lung, creating life-threatening condition requiring immediate surgery. Her medical bag was destroyed, forcing improvisation with battlefield materials. Walter remained conscious, but weak, breathing labored, and blood pressure dropping. He insisted Danny and Ginny escape while he provided covering fire, but his condition made further combat impossible. Time was running out for everyone. Danny's takedown of Snake Rodriguez was devastating and final. The last member of Iron Wolves leadership fell unconscious, his rifle disabled, and threat neutralized. Immediate danger had passed, but Walter's injuries created new crisis. With federal agents approaching and Walter critically wounded, Danny and Ginny coordinated medical evacuation while securing the area. Danny's tactical training helped identify extraction routes while Ginny stabilized Walter's condition. Under extreme pressure, Ginny performed emergency procedures that saved Walter's life. Her trauma nursing experience proved invaluable as she stopped internal bleeding and maintained his airway using improvised equipment and pure determination. FBI tactical teams finally reached mine shaft to find hostage situation resolved and Iron Wolves neutralized. Agent Collins coordinated medical evacuation while securing evidence of gangs' criminal activities. Cedar Ridge's population arrived to support their neighbors, with Dr. Murphy providing advanced medical care and volunteers assisting with evidence collection. The town had finally united in aftermath of shared trauma. AS medical helicopters evacuated Walter to trauma center. Danny reflected on cost of violence even in defense of innocent people. His spiritual awakening included understanding that every victory in combat came with consequences and responsibilities. Hammer regained consciousness to find himself in federal custody, his criminal empire destroyed and reputation shattered. His obsession with defeating a legend resulted in total personal destruction and life imprisonment. Emergency surgery at Regional Trauma Center saved Walter's life, though recovery would be long and difficult. His sacrifice demonstrated that heroism wasn't limited to martial arts masters. Ordinary people could display extraordinary courage. Dawn broke over Cedar Ridge as Danny sat in hospital waiting room, holding vigil for Walter's recovery. Jenny slept beside him, exhausted from hours of providing medical care. Through the window, sun illuminated mountains and town that had become their home and family point 3 days after the mine shaft battle. Danny visited Walter in the ICU, where the rancher was finally stable after multiple surgeries. Walter's first words were asking about his cattle and whether Jenny was safe, his priorities unchanged despite nearly dying for his principal's doctor. Murphy and the trauma team briefed Danny and Jenny on Walter's condition. The lung injury would heal completely, but at 72, recovery would be slow and require extensive rehabilitation. However, his military conditioning and stubborn determination suggested full recovery was possible. FBI agent Collins interviewed Danny about events leading to the Iron Wolf's destruction. The evidence was overwhelming: drug manufacturing, kidnapping, assault, and attempted murder. Federal prosecutors expected multiple life sentences for surviving gang members without possibility of parole. Rex Hammer Morrison faced federal charges guaranteeing life imprisonment without parole. His criminal empire had collapsed completely. His gang was disbanded permanently, and his reputation as fearsome leader was destroyed by defeat at hands of a retired movie star. Cedar Ridge had been transformed by the crisis. Neighbors who barely spoke before the Iron Wolf's arrival now worked together, repairing damage and supporting victims. The shared trauma had created lasting bonds throughout the entire community. Jenny's near-death experience convinced her to move from Billings to Cedar Ridge permanently. She took a position at the Regional Medical Center while helping her grandfather recover. The ranch would have family continuity for another generation. Of Kowalski's, federal agents offered Danny witness protection and relocation, but he chose to remain in Cedar Ridge. The town had become his home, and the people had become his family. His search for peace had finally succeeded, but on different terms than expected. The community rallied to repair damage to Walter's property, with volunteers working around the clock to restore fences, rebuild structures, and replace equipment. The effort demonstrated that Walter's stand against criminals had inspired permanent positive change throughout the region. Sheriff Pete Garrison, initially ineffective during the crisis, redeemed himself by leading cleanup efforts and implementing new security measures. His experience with federal agents taught him that small-town law enforcement could still make a difference when properly supported. News of Donnie Yen's involvement in defeating a motorcycle gang attracted national media attention, but Danny refused interviews and publicity. His heroism remained private, focused on protecting friends rather than advancing his career or seeking recognition. The FBI commended Danny's actions in dismantling a major criminal organization, but he declined formal recognition. His reward was Walter's recovery and the community's safety, achievements that mattered more than official acknowledgement or fame. That Danny's spiritual journey concluded with understanding that true peace came not from avoiding conflict, but from being strong enough to protect what mattered most. 2 weeks after Walter's hospital discharge, Cedar Ridge hosted its first community barbecue in decades. The event took place on Walter's ranch, symbolizing the town's unity and successful defense of their values against criminal invasion and intimidation. The barbecue brought together people who had been divided by fear during the Iron Wolf's occupation. Former adversaries worked side by side preparing food, setting up tables, and sharing stories of their experiences during the crisis that had tested everyone's character. Walter moved slowly but participated fully in hosting the community gathering. His recovery symbolized the town's own healing process, damaged but not broken, weakened but ultimately stronger than before the criminal assault on their peaceful way of life. Danny had transitioned from mysterious neighbor to beloved community member. Children followed him around asking about martial arts, while adults thanked him quietly for protecting their families. His celebrity status was less important than his role as protector and friend. Jenny had successfully established herself as the regional medical center's trauma specialist while living on the ranch with Walter. Her decision to leave city life for rural Montana represented the victory of family values over material success and urban conveniences. Sheriff Garrison had evolved from ineffective local law enforcement to confident leader who coordinated with federal agencies while maintaining small-town values. His growth demonstrated that people could rise to meet extraordinary challenges when circumstances demanded courage. Dr. Murphy had become the unofficial coordinator of community support services, organizing medical care, counseling, and practical assistance for those affected by the Iron Wolves occupation. Her leadership proved that heroism took many different forms throughout the community. Local businesses were thriving as the community's unity attracted positive attention from surrounding areas. The hardware store, diner, and medical clinic all reported increased business from people who wanted to support the town that stood up to criminals. Agent Collins provided final updates on prosecution of surviving Iron Wolves members. The evidence collected during and after the mine shaft battle ensured lengthy prison sentences for all participants in the criminal organization's activities across 3 states. Local teenagers, inspired by Danny's example, organized self-defense classes and community service projects. The martial arts instruction emphasized discipline, respect, and protection of others rather than aggression or dominance over weaker people. That Walter's ranch benefited from community support and improved security measures. His cattle operation expanded as neighboring ranchers sought his advice on dealing with external threats while maintaining traditional agricultural values and independence. The community held a memorial service for law enforcement officers and civilians injured during the Iron Wolves occupation. The ceremony emphasized healing and unity rather than vengeance, reflecting the values that Danny had fought to protect. As the sun set over the community barbecue, Danny and Walter sat on the ranch porch watching neighbors clean up after a successful celebration, understanding they had built something stronger than individual courage. 1 month after the Iron Wolves' defeat, Danny broke ground for Cedar Ridge's first formal martial arts school. The ceremony attracted students from across the region who wanted to learn from the man who single-handedly defeated an entire criminal organization through skill and determination. That Danny's martial arts academy emphasized character development, community service, and protection of others over competition or violence. His curriculum included meditation, philosophy, and conflict resolution alongside physical training, creating well-rounded individuals rather than simple fighters. The school attracted diverse students, teenagers seeking discipline, adults wanting self-defense skills, and seniors interested in Tai Chi for health. The common thread was Danny's emphasis on using strength to serve others rather than dominate them through intimidation or aggression. Despite his age and recent injuries, Walter became the school's unofficial historian and wisdom keeper, sharing stories about courage, sacrifice, and standing up for principles. His military experience complemented Danny's martial arts philosophy perfectly, creating comprehensive life lessons. Jenny established a successful medical practice serving the regional community while maintaining her residence on Walter's ranch. Her trauma nursing experience made her invaluable for treating serious injuries and emergency medical situations throughout the rural area. The martial arts school attracted visitors and students who boosted the local economy significantly. The hardware store expanded to sell training equipment, the diner catered group meals, and the medical clinic benefited from increased population and economic activity. The FBI maintained a regional office in Cedar Ridge, creating partnership between federal law enforcement and local community policing. The arrangement deterred criminal activity while respecting local autonomy and traditional values that residents cherished. That Walter's cattle operation grew as surrounding ranchers formed a cooperative for mutual support and shared resources. The organization emphasized traditional values and resistance to external pressure from criminal or corporate entities seeking to exploit rural communities. That Danny's presence created a bridge between Eastern martial arts philosophy and Western frontier values. His teachings demonstrated that warrior traditions from different cultures shared common principles about courage, honor, and protecting innocent people from those who would harm them. Local teenagers benefited from structured activities and positive role models. The combination of martial arts training, ranch work, and community service created opportunities for character development and practical skills that would serve them throughout their lives. The relationship between Walter, Danny, and Jenny had evolved into a chosen family that transcended blood relationships. Their mutual respect and shared experiences created bonds stronger than many biological families, built on genuine love and tested by fire. Sheriff Garrison had transformed from ineffective local official to respected law enforcement leader who balanced community policing with professional standards. His growth demonstrated that people could rise to meet extraordinary challenges when properly motivated and supported. At sunset on a perfect autumn day, Danny and Walter worked together repairing fence on the ranch's eastern boundary. Their quiet conversation covering the past year's events and future plans for their shared community. 6 months later, dawn broke over Cedar Ridge with the same golden light that had illuminated Walter's ranch on that peaceful morning before the Iron Wolves arrived. But everything had changed. The community was stronger, relationships deeper, and the future more secure than ever before. Walter, now fully recovered, fed his expanded herd of prize Angus cattle while Danny practiced Tai Chi in the adjacent garden. Their daily routine had become a ritual of friendship and mutual respect that anchored both men's lives in shared purpose and common values. Cedar Ridge had grown from 847 to over 1,200 residents as people sought the security and values demonstrated during the crisis. New families brought children, businesses, and energy while maintaining the town's essential character and rural charm that attracted them. That Danny's Martial Arts Academy had become regionally famous, attracting students from 3 states with waiting lists for admission. Parents wanted their children to learn discipline, character, and proper use of strength from someone who had proven these values under fire. Jenny's expanded medical practice served over 5,000 people across the rural region. Her trauma experience and emergency procedures had saved dozens of lives, while building a reputation for excellence and compassion that drew patients from hundreds of miles away. At Walter's Ranch had become anchor for a thriving agricultural cooperative, including 12 neighboring properties. The organization demonstrated that traditional farming could prosper when communities supported each other against external pressures and corporate encroachment. The permanent FBI office in Cedar Ridge had prevented 3 attempted criminal incursions while maintaining excellent community relations. The partnership proved that law enforcement and local communities could work together effectively when mutual respect guided their cooperation. That Danny's integration into Western culture while maintaining his martial arts heritage had created a unique blend of traditions. His school taught Eastern philosophy through Western applications, creating something new and valuable that honored both cultural backgrounds. The chosen family of Walter, Danny, and Jenny had become legendary in the region. Their story of mutual protection and sacrifice inspired other communities to build stronger relationships and support networks that could withstand external threats and pressures. Youth development programs had transformed teenagers who witnessed the Iron Wolves' defeat into community leaders applying lessons about courage and principle to their adult lives. They represented the next generation of citizens willing to defend their values against any threat. That a simple monument in the town square honored all who stood against the Iron Wolves, with special recognition for Walter's sacrifice and Danny's protection. The inscription read, "Courage is not the absence of fear, but action in spite of it." As the sun reached full height, Danny and Walter concluded their morning exercises and walked toward the ranch house, where Jenny had prepared breakfast. Their conversation was comfortable and familiar. 3 people who had become family through shared trials, mutual respect, and unwavering commitment to protecting what mattered most. The story ended as it began, with a peaceful morning on Walter's ranch, but now enriched by Danny's presence, Jenny's laughter, and neighbors working cooperatively on adjacent properties, their voices carrying across the valley like sounds of genuine contentment earned through trial and ultimate triumph. If you liked the story, please watch another story on our channel and subscribe to the channel.